Hello. Hi everyone. Okay, so today we are doing birds of paradise. Okay, I figured it will be perfect for this time of the year. It's not yet summer, but well, in tropical countries, it's all year round. Basically, these flowers, these tropical flowers. And as a child, the first time I saw this flower was really very eye-opening for me. It's very beautiful. I wasn't sure at first if it was a bird, but it was actually a flower. Anyway, so today we will paint the birds of paradise. And of course, it will be in layers as usual with subjects like this that has several colors. It's really important to work in layers so that we can get all the beautiful colors that it has. Okay, so I actually did this in acrylic already, birds of paradise. So layers is really the key. Okay, so let's start with me flipping down the camera, and you won't be seeing my face anymore, it's just the desk, which is the important thing anyway, to see what I'm working on. So it'll be flipping around, so just stay with me. Okay, there you go. So now you see my desk, and these are, let me adjust the lighting so we get brighter light here. Okay, there you go. And then I'm working on a small piece of paper today so that it won't take as long. Okay, so let me just make adjustments. Zoom in. Okay, there you go. All right, so today I have two sets with me, the Allegro and Sereno. Okay, so I will be getting colors from both of these sets. So these are our aspiring artists or beginner sets. So each set has 24 colors. This set has the warmer colors and this one has the cooler. Okay, so I'll just open them up. Here you will see the swatch of colors. And here too. So these two things are really very useful. I really have them always. I pack them in because I really look at them for reference which colors I'm going to use. Okay, so if you saw the photo in the event, then you already know the colors of the birds of paradise. Let me see if I have it on my device. Okay, one moment. For those who haven't seen let me just see if it's here. Okay. All right, so it's this one right here. Okay, so you will find this reference photo in the event, in this event, watercolor bird of paradise. So you can save it there. I also included a line drawing, so you can also save the line drawing to help you out with sketching. You can trace it or you can use it as a guide. Okay, so let's start. This will be out of the camera. Okay, so let's start. If you saw my sketch, okay, this is it. Okay, not too dark, but it doesn't matter if it is darker because the colors are very vibrant. So the lines will be covered except for the really lighter ones in this area. Okay, so just choose the brushes that you're most comfortable using. In my case, it will more often than not be round brushes. So I often just get several sizes just to be ready. Okay, but usually with a nice round brush, you can do so much already. Okay, just have clean water ready and your paper towels. Okay, and then you're good to go. So if you have your mixing area with your set, then that's good, or you can have a separate mixing plate like I do. So let's start. I'm starting with just a smaller, maybe 5 or 6 size brush, round brush. And as usual, we'll start with the paler colors, which is more often than not yellow. Okay, unless your work doesn't have yellow, in which case look for the next lightest yellow. So for that, I'm going to use Hansa yellow right here. Okay, so Hansa yellow is just a nice vibrant yellow. It's not too cool and it's not too warm either. So it's just a nice yellow. Meanwhile, I'm just going to remove some paint right here. Okay, Hansa yellow. And then I will start here and here. All the parts that have even red or orange, I will go over them with yellow. Okay, so I like to layer my colors like that so that they're much more three-dimensional later on. Okay, so I have this yellow right here. So just light for now, first layer. And then I just keep looking at your reference and see where all the colors are. Again, even the parts that are orange or red-orange, I still layer that with yellow. And then even this part, which is purple, it also has a streak of pale yellow to white. So I'm adding it, but only to the left side, not the whole thing. Okay, so this is just your first layer. So it might dry too light and you'll probably have to go over it again. But it's best to just do this in layers so that you don't end up with a too vibrant color on, let's say, a very pale area. And here it's mostly very, very lightest yellow, almost white. So I'm adding water to the brush and just going over this with a very pale wash. If it's too pale, then I can always add more to it later on. So all these blossoming out, they start yellow at the base and they turn into different colors, into yellow orange, into red orange, into purple, into red orange. So we always will start with the lightest, so the base, and that's yellow. Okay, so you don't have to make this too detailed. And I'm also adding yellow at the tips because I also see that the petals have a pale edge or texture at the end. So I'll add this now. And here too at the edge. Okay, so don't be afraid when you do this first layer, because even if you mistakenly painted over some areas, they will still be covered eventually, since it is the lightest layer. Okay, so don't freak out if, oops, I shouldn't have covered that with yellow. It'll still be covered, so just relax. Okay, and then here too, and then here. So what I'll do is I'll color this yellow too. Okay, so again, this is up to interpretation. This is how I see things, and this is how I do things. So if you don't want to have yellow here, then you don't have to. Okay, and our first layer is done. Just like that. Okay, so for this, I will use a blow dryer. Just quickly go over this. It won't be, it's not really very wet, but just to be sure, I'm just going to go over it with the blow dryer. So expect some noise. All right, next. Okay, looking at our reference, we have yellow orange. Okay, so let's mix that color here. We already have an orange right here, or we also have gamboge right here, and we can just add a little bit of red to it. I think I like this, so I'll use gamboge. Gamboge is also one of the colors that I usually have, even with tubes. If I need to buy tubes one by one, I always have the new gamboge color. It's a nice color to have. It's a nice golden yellow. Okay, so again, you can always swatch it out in your card just to be sure if you like that color. It's pretty near the color that I need, so I'll start with this and we'll just layer the darker orange on top. Okay, so this is for this petal right here. So let me just go over this. Okay, and this part is a bit lighter, so I dip my brush in water and just spread the paint down there. And this part has a very pale yellow streak, so I'll leave it as is and just dip my brush lightly in the color and add a streak of yellow orange here. All right, I think that's enough. And now I'm going to look at the other areas that has the same color and apply it, like here. So again, I will layer my colors, so I'll add it to the ones with the deep orange color, so that by the time I add the deep orange later on, it's going to be very solid and not like flat. And then there's a bit slightly here, so I just dot it and then spread it out. And then here as well. Okay, so just look to your reference photo. So I'm slowly working from the pale yellow to the gamboge to later on to the very vibrant and dark deep orange or red orange. And here too. And then just wetting the brush and then spreading the color downwards and upwards here as well, just to soften. Here there's a dash of warm yellow, so I'm just going to add that. And again, blend it outwards and inwards. Okay, so we have our second round of colors. Now let's move on to the deeper orange. So the same color, gamboge. Let's add a dash of red. In this case, I'm going to use scarlet because it's a warm red. And what we have here is a warm yellow-orange. And again, you can always test it out. Okay, so if you feel like it's still too light, just keep adding slowly, because reds can be very, very potent. So if you're not careful, you will add too much red, and then what happens is you'll have to add yellow again to counter the red, and you'll end up with mixtures that are just too much, that you don't need all of them. Okay, so just add the red sparingly. We started with the deeper orange here and then blended it downwards using water. Okay, so just by adding water to your brush, you just dilute the paint slightly, and you can have a gradiated effect. Okay, so again, I'm adding a little bit here at the line. Okay, so that's done. Now we'll move to the even deeper orange. Okay, so let me just clear some section here. I don't often wash my palettes because I can still use the paints every now and then. Okay, so let me prepare deep orange. So scarlet is actually perfect for that. So I start with scarlet. If you put it against the photo, it's practically that color. Okay, so I'm just going to prepare a certain amount. Okay, once you have your scarlet, let me just switch to a smaller brush for a bit. Okay, I'm going to use scarlet to add the bright areas here with a small brush. Sometimes my hand is kind of shaky, so just to make sure that I don't produce thick, dark lines, I just switch to a smaller brush. So even though I press, I can't really do thick lines. Okay, so there's this bright streak here of this vibrant color, as well as the tips. So you add these details, it really makes a difference to your bird of paradise. So that's why you should always have at least up 2 to 3 detail brushes so that you can do these details, especially if you want to do more botanical art. Detail brushes are a must. Okay, and then I just look at my photo and see where I add some details, some streaks, some texture that I see. Okay, and this petal is almost complete. Okay, but again, you can always come back to it tomorrow, and I'm sure you'll see something else that you can improve on. Okay, so next, let's move on to this one. So this is a really very dark orange, or at least deep orange. So let's go over it. So this is scarlet, and since it's more on the orange side and we layer it on top of the yellow, it gives you a really nice, vibrant orange. So again, I'm going to my smaller brush just so I can get the nice tip. So these brushes I'm using are all from one set. Okay, so I'm just using this for the edges so that I don't go and cover too much. Then going down here, but it's fading into the pale yellow. So I'm going to rinse off my brush now and then use the color from here and just blend it inwards. If you feel like it's still too dark, then you can lift it off with your brush and wipe it on your paper, like what I'm doing now. Okay, and now we're going to let's finish all the oranges first before we do the purple here and here. Okay, because purple is going to, it's much darker than these colors. And anyway, we started with a warm color, so let's do the warm colors first before we move on to the cool colors. Okay, let's continue. Again, this is orange, orange, orange. There's this part here that's purple. Okay, so just be careful because they're all like entangled with each other, so it's very easy to be lost. So just take your time and keep looking at your reference photo so you don't paint mistakenly, because orange will be quite hard to lift off. Okay, so again, let me just get more scarlet. Sometimes when it's quite hot where I am, the colors just dry very, very quickly. Okay, so you can do more than one layer for this if you feel like your orange is too light or it's too flat. It just might mean that you just need another layer of it with maybe a bit of red to deepen the color further. Which you will actually need later to add shadows here and there. So we'll be needing to mix a deep red. And again, it goes lighter, so I'm going to rinse off the color from my brush and then just use the color from here and blend it downwards. So if you're looking at the reference photo, you'll see that this section is a bit lighter. So I'm lifting it off. So this is a very, very easy way to create the lighter colors. Just paint over everything and lift off the areas that you want to be lighter. Okay, there's also a bit of lightness here, so let me just try to lift that off as well. Okay, next, let's give this time to dry and move on to the next one. So again, just scarlet for now. So I'm going to start here, not at the base, because I want to be able to lighten it downwards. And again, switching to a smaller brush for the fine tips. Or if you have a more springy brush, then you can use that. It will have a sharper tip. Okay, going back to the other brush. Again, rinsing the color out just so I can blend the color from here downwards. Okay, so that's how I do my gradiated color. And I'm just adding dabs of color here and there because it's too light. Okay, and I'll leave it at that because I can always add another layer and or two or three later on. For now, I'm going to move on to the other orange areas here. There's actually a bit of purple here. It's not very visible because of the dark background, but if you want to go for a lighter background, then there's a little bit of purple here. From the purple here, ending there. Okay, and again, lighter tips. Okay, and move on to the next one down here. Just keep adding pigment if you're running out. So take your time when you do your petals so that you have your nice curves, your nice forms. Okay, so the petals right now are just like blending with each other, but once we add the shadows later on, then you'll be able to see the divisions between each petal. So don't worry if they look like they're just one big chunk of petal. Okay, so for that section, you saw that I did streaks so that I can maintain the pale yellow shining through. And again, just blending the color downwards. But not too much because you don't want to stain everything with a pale orange when you don't see it. Okay, so let me just check if I have the oranges covered. Okay, so now let's move on to adding a deeper red. Okay, so using the same mixture that we have here. Let's add our scarlet. And add vermilion to it. Okay, so vermilion is our deeper red. This is it right here. Okay, so if this is scarlet, this is vermilion. So much deeper, still a bit warm, but much deeper than the scarlet. Okay, so let's use the vermilion. And deepen the areas that need deepening. Okay, so it would be here where it's right next to this petal, there would be a shadow. So apply it there. Then again, dip my brush in water and use the color here and spread it. There you go. And do the same here and for all the other petals. So using this color to add dimension to the petals so it doesn't come out just like a flat petal with no streaks or lines or veins. And I'll probably need to add a deeper red later for an even more contrasting shadow. But for now, let's start with this and see how it goes. Okay, so add it in all the parts that you see are much deeper in color. And again, just dip your brush in water and just soften the edges if you feel like it's too harsh. Okay, just checking every now and then on my photo. So you don't have to copy exactly, but at least use it as a guide. So you don't have to guess where the shadows are. And again, just blending it out so you don't have harsh edges. And here too, there's a squiggly line, squiggly darker red section here. Okay, there's a darker red here as well. And then here. Okay, so just step by step. And layer by layer. Okay. So let's see. Okay, so I can now mix an even darker red. Okay, so using vermilion. Okay, just vermilion, and then let's add some green to it. Okay, which is this viridian. So I'm just going to get some viridian and add it to my green to create a deeper red. Okay, just control how much green you add depending on how much deeper the red you want to be. So you can already see it turning a deep red. So this is one way where you can deepen a color. For example, you want to neutralize your red, you can mix some green with it. Depending on the green that you mix, you will get different kinds of reds. So just try them out and see what you get. In my case, I used viridian because I want it to be deeper. So if you used a lighter green, you'll probably get a more muted red. So it's better that you mix it this way rather than just using brown. Sometimes it would look out of place, but instead of just mixing using a pre-mixed brown, instead if you mix a reddish brown from red and green, it would look more harmonious. Okay, so if you can mix the colors that you need from the colors that you have used, it's really so much better. Okay, so adding the deeper shadows. Again, this is really the one way to just naturally divide so we can tell apart the petals from each other. And I'm also trying to apply it in linear form so that it also gives the petals texture. So you're adding shadow at the same time you're also adding the texture. Of course, if the petals have texture. If they don't and you add, it might look odd, but if you see texture right there, then why not? Okay, here as well. All the petals basically. Okay, so this is really the idea of layering. So with watercolor, with all the paints really, you just need to do layering and you will be able to achieve the look that you're looking for. Of course, it also requires more patience, but as you can see, you'll get what you're looking for. Okay, so it's becoming too dull now. Let me add more green. So again, if you just need it to be even more darker, just add more green. Again, you can always test it out in your scratch paper, just so you won't have any regrets. But the more often you mix and you play around with your colors, the more natural it will come to you. So don't be afraid to try things out and play around. Okay, so now you can see the petals are now separate from each other. And I'm now just adding the shadows here and there. And again, if I see some texture or lines that are more visible than the others and I feel like it would add to the work, then I also add that. Anyway, if you feel like they're too harsh, you can always go over it with a wet brush and soften it. Okay, now the orange petals are done. So let's move on to the purple. Okay, so let's see if we have purple already ready. And we have from here, from the Sereno. Okay, so we have ultramarine violet deep, which is lovely. Okay, so let's use that. Let's switch this out. I have some purple right here, so let me add to it. So as you can see, my mixing plate is quite multicolored, so there's always some space where I can just add the colors that I'm mixing. Okay, so this is quite deep, and if you look at the reference photo, this is the color. Okay, actually my lights are quite bright. it's sort of washing out the colors. Okay, so let's continue. So again, this is purple, so I will now just check if it is the purple I'm looking for, and yes. Okay, so this is a vibrant purple, which is what I want, so I'm going to use it here. So I will work with layers as well. Okay, just be careful not to cover your orange. So do this carefully. There's also a bit of purple right here. You don't have to do a dark background for this because it's quite vibrant. It can be just against a white background. Okay, so that's actually more yellow, so let me just go over this with yellow. Okay, Let's continue. Add the purple. And here I'm going to use a thin brush, the one that I'm using earlier. Because there are streaks of purple, but you can still see the yellow, so let's not cover that. Okay, and then let's go up to here because there's actually a very sharp point to it. Again, it kind of fades into the background because of the dark background, but I see it, and so it reaches here. Okay, just an FYI. Not sure if I sketched it in the line drawing, so just right now I see it. Then just deepening the purple, and we'll also need a deeper purple later for the shadows, but right now this is looking okay. Okay, so let me just finish the streaks going down. And then fade it to the yellow again. Okay, so just use water for that. And your brush. Okay. And there you go. The first purple area for first layer is done. So let's move on to this one. Again, just do the purple. Careful not to cover the orange. So if you need to switch to a much smaller brush, go ahead. Whichever gives you the best control. Okay, there's a bit of lightness here, so let me just do that now before I cover it. Then add the deep purple again. So don't worry if it's not an exact match, as long as it looks similar-ish and it looks like a bird of paradise flower, then you're okay. Okay, again dipping my brush in the water just to soften the edges here and make it lighter. As I blend it towards the pale yellow down here. Okay, so now we have this down, just softening the section right here. And then I will add the tiny bit here that I mentioned earlier before I forget and wonder later on why there's a notch right there of white, which is weird. Okay. All right, so now it's time to mix a deeper purple. Okay, so using the same color, ultramarine violet deep. Okay, so let's add, let's see, let's add some deep blue to it. So let's add some Prussian blue. Okay, so we want it deeper but not brown, but so we're going towards a deeper blue. but still purple. So just try to get the mix, and again, you can always test it out. Okay, so in this case, it is deeper. It is still more on the purple side, and I'll use that for the deeper areas. Okay, so which is at the tip right here. Some of the lines here. And then shadows here. Okay, so don't go overboard, just where you need to add it to. You still want the contrast of your colors. So this is a rigger brush, a 4/0 rigger brush. I really find it very useful for small, thin lines and sections. Okay, and I'm going to add just some shadow here as well. Okay, and also the other side where it meets the orange. So objects close to each other will cast shadows on each other. Okay, so just think about that. And then let's go over here and do the shadows as well. So we're getting there, guys. Again, as you can see, it's not overly complicated. It's just really a lot of layering. So it will just take time, but you can totally do this. And you don't have to do this in one sitting like me. You can totally take your time. You can do this across several days. Okay, so everyone's pace is different. So you do you, whatever is comfortable for you. Okay, so that's why I like to have just several brushes ready, so I can switch between them as needed. Okay, and here too, there's quite a deep purple area, but I'm going to use a much thinner brush so that I can be rest assured that I won't. I tend to overpaint sometimes. And with details like this, you want to be as precise as you can possibly for the edges. Okay, then also there's some streaks here like this, some texture. Then soften it with a wet brush. Then a shadowed area as well, right here. Okay, so I'm just switching between these two brushes depending on if I need more finer control or not. And if you feel like it still needs more depth later on, then you can always add another layer of shadow to darken it. Okay, so that's really up to you. As always, just take your time, take breaks, and I always recommend to come back with fresher eyes later on, especially if you're starting to get frustrated. Just take a break, okay? So we all have our points where we just can't seem to make things go right. When you reach that, take a break. Don't force things. Okay, so there you have it. We have our oranges and our purples, and now we can work on the green down here. Okay, so let's go and mix our colors. Okay, so we have a deep green, but we have a bright green first. Okay, so let's start with cobalt green. Okay, so we added the yellow earlier because there is a lighter area here that it's very yellow-green. So we have a cobalt green mix first, and we just go over this section. Okay, so I'm not covering the yellow. I'm just covering the areas that don't have yellow using the cobalt green. Okay, and just rinsing my brush, I take the color from the edges and blend it towards the yellow sections. Okay, so this is where you see layering. And because we used yellow underneath, it still shows through here at the edges where we do see a pop of yellow. So we just layer a pale green over the top by getting green pigment from here and pulling it towards the yellow sections. And the same here. So if it looks streaky, don't worry. You actually want that because the texture of this section is quite streaky. And here too, get the green and pull it outwards. Okay, and now we have our base green, so we'll now mix a deeper green. So let's get some of the phthalo green. And then mix some red with it. Okay, so if you want to create your own brown, you can mix two contrasting colors like red and green. You can create your own brown. Okay, so let's use permanent red right here. So this is a neutral red. Okay, so it's too much, I think. So let me add some phthalo green again. I just want a deep green. Okay, so I think that's more like it. Let me just test it out. And there you go. Okay, so from phthalo green and permanent red, we get this really nice deep green, which is perfect for the deep green right here. Okay, so let me use this starting here. Okay, and then blending it upwards towards here, adding some water to it, and towards there as well. So we're covering the previous very bright green. And here too. Okay, and then I'm going to use my blow dryer so I can dry this quickly and add another layer. My paper curled a bit. But that's the nice thing, when it's warm you can shape it and flatten it. Okay, so let me just... Okay, so let me just add more red and green mixture. This one, now let's make it more deeper value. And then go over the same area. Okay. Then with a wet brush, just blend it. Okay, don't go over areas too much because you might reactivate the layers underneath. So just a certain amount of brush strokes. Okay, the more that you go over and over again over a certain spot, you're bound to lift off the layers that you worked on earlier. So just be careful. If you feel like you need to add more detail, instead wait for that layer to dry and then add another layer later on. Okay, base green for this one. For this darker, I used phthalo green, and then permanent red, or if you have alizarin crimson, you know, all the more neutral reds. So if you mix those two, you will get a deep green. Okay, or you can also try with viridian, and then use it with a neutral red and see if you can also get the deep green that you want. But for the brighter green below, I used cobalt green. Okay, you can also try to mix it with your yellows and blues if you don't have cobalt green. Okay, so it's this just nice, a little bit warm kind of green, but not too much. Okay, so we have a bit of red here, so before I forget, let me just go and do the red. So I'll use the permanent red right here because it's just a nice, nice red. Okay, so there's some red here at this green section. So let me just go over the edges. And then quickly, before things dry, soften the edges so that it blends towards the green softly. Okay, so if you feel like you need a brighter red, then you can also add more. For example, I feel like I do, so I just add a bit of crimson maybe. Let's see. Just to add a pop of brightness. Okay, crimson is perfect. So don't despair like me. If you feel like, oops, I think it's too dead, you can always layer another color on top of it. Okay? The magic of watercolors is that you can layer. So don't be too impatient and just work at it one layer at a time. Really, I learned this the hard way. Such a crammer when I was studying that I just like to cram things, and it won't always be optimal. Like in watercolor, you need time. Okay, and there's red here too, so I'm just adding it slowly, again, because red is very strong, just like phthalo blue. Phthalo blue is also very strong. Sometimes I forget and I just swish my brush on the pan and I get too much blue or red. Okay, so some colors are very, very strong and staining. So swatch your colors out so you can get to know them better. Okay, so here I see a dash of red or maybe brown, but anyway, red will do. Then I just see some sections that should just have a brighter yellow, so I'll just dab bright yellow here and there, like here. And here. Just make sure your brush is clean. If you're using one brush for a lot of sections. And here. And also here. Okay, so layering is really amazing. And I think I'm done. Yeah, okay, this will do. Okay, so again, you can just have a white background. It's already perfect as it is. Or you can, of course, do the dark background if that's what you prefer, or you can do two kinds. Why not, right? Try them both. Okay, so this is the Bird of Paradise, and let me see. Let me just, with a photo. Okay, so here is the photo, and here is the watercolor version. Okay, I feel like I got it. So I hope you guys try this out. Okay, so let me just now switch back to my face. Okay, but first let me flip it around, otherwise I will be flipped down. Okay, and then zoom out. Okay, thank you for joining me, guys. So here it is. This is how small it is. Okay, and as you can see, just rewatch the video for the color mixtures I use, or if you don't have the colors and you'd like me to guide you towards the colors that you can use with what you have, just message here in the event, or you can just message me actually. I can just reply to you as long as I'm online. I'll reply to you guys. So just if you need guidance, if you need anything, um, just let me know. Okay, so this is my Bird of Paradise, and oh really? How awesome, appropriate. Okay, so now you can paint it for your you can hang it on your home, so it'll be a reminder of your wedding flowers. That's nice. So birds of paradise are really beautiful because, well, they're like creatures. When I look at them, I don't see them as just flowers. They're like just a different kind. So they're beautiful and they're vibrant and just really lovely. So I hope you try them out. And if you do, please do share your work in the group, because I really, really love it when I see your own versions, because we all paint different versions and that's really magical. So please do try it out and share it. And I shared the reference photo and the line drawing here in the event. You just go to this event, Watercolor Bird of Paradise, and you'll find both there. And that's it for today. So I do hope you try this out, and thank you for staying with me and keeping me company. And I hope to see you on the next one, next Monday. Bye, guys.